Hello everyone, welcome to A Year of Game Design Week 7, the video journal where I basically document my progress in attempting to learn game design by doing 30 minutes of game design every day throughout the calendar year 2020. Things are still going strong, 7 weeks in now, haven't missed a day. Actually, as I'm recording this, it's been over 50 days, so halfway to 100. Still enjoying it, still having a pretty good time. So this week, mainly, again, as the previous week, has been working on Tundra Runner, a platformer. We'll jump in and take a look at that. But before we do, I wanted to just share one resource that I've been finding pretty helpful with the course of building this platformer. It's a course called Making a 2D Platformer in Unity. It's a course by James Doyle. I think it's available. A lot of it might be available on YouTube for free. I ended up getting the Udemy course just so everything's structured and organized and it's easy for me to find. I am finding that as I'm building this platformer kind of on my own, I'm referring to his course as kind of a guide and for some of the tutorials on different sections and things like that. So I'm finding it's pretty helpful. I had worked through his whole course. Maybe it must have been about a year and a half ago. And so a lot of the concepts and techniques and mechanics are the same things that I'm using in the platformer this time. So when I don't really know what to do, that's been kind of my go-to resource. And again, I don't get any money from them, and there's no benefit to me for doing that, but I would like to, in the course of doing this video journal, recommend resources that I found helpful and things that have been really helpful for me in learning, because I realize there may be people out there looking for the same types of resources as I'm using as well. With that in mind, let's dig in and take a look at what I was able to accomplish in the past 7 days, working, again, went through about 30 minutes to an hour on each day. I think a couple days I might have actually gone even farther than an hour. So let's jump in and take a look at the game. So one of the things I mentioned last week is that I didn't think there'd be as much visible progress this week as there was in previous weeks. And I do think that's the case as I'm kind of looking at things. Most of the stuff that I put in now is kind of little tweaks to the gameplay or just some little user interface and things like that. And I guess those are visible, but I think sometimes when you're kind of making a game, the idea you put a bonfire in and it triggers, or you put a snowman enemy in, that stuff is a little bit more dramatic and a little bit more visual, whereas this stuff starts to get a little bit more subtle. But still, I'm always kind of interested to feel like on a day-to-day basis, I don't feel like sometimes there gets to be a lot done, but then when I look at what I got done over the course of a whole week, it actually feels like quite a bit. So I think last week a lot of these visual pieces were in here, but the user interface is now in and working. And eventually up here in these, I've got 100 as digits for both the health mechanic and then the body temperature mechanic. And the body temperature mechanic isn't working yet. That's just a placeholder. But the health mechanic is. So if the guy runs into the snowman does 10 damage, and I can set that to whatever I want it to be. And so he also gets knocked back and made invincible then. Because what was happening before is he would hit it, and then it would register 3 or 4 hits, and his health would go down to 20 on one shot. So now he runs into it, the snowman does damage and drives him back and up into the air and makes him invincible for that brief fifth of a second while he's flying backwards to get knocked off the air like that. And now, so as the snowman can hurt the player can hurt the snowman. This one is kind of fun. So if he jumps and lands right on his head, boom, he wipes out the snowman, which is kind of cool. Now, the other thing, that's one of those other subtle things that was able to put in, is that, so the snowman's wiped out, but what I want to have happen, and likewise, these ornaments are gathered and things like that, and the score goes up to 12. But what I want to do is if you lose your life at the level before you complete the level, you want to lose those points garnered over the level, and the enemy should spawn back. So you can't kind of clear stuff out, die, and then come back. So I'll work this metric to save it between levels, but during a level, if you die, I want these. And that actually took a while, because you have to, some more of the complicated programming, because you have to create an array of objects that you want to respawn, get their positions and get their status and things like that. And then when you die, you have to set them back at that exact same spot. So that took actually, I think, about 2 days to get that whole level set working correctly now. And the life system is working. So you notice when the player dies, lives go down to 2, and then they go back. And then the other thing I was able to get put in, if you go to 1 life and then back down 1 more, starting to get the whole the user screens and things like that, the user interface between the levels coming in. So now if you go to 0, you get this kind of grayed out screen and it goes to game over. And there's no way to escape from that yet, but eventually I'll put in more features in that. So on the whole, it felt like starting to get there. And the player can die by, oops, nice. kills the snowman there too, which is good. But the player can die in a number of different ways. His hit points can go down to 0 up here, or if he falls off and hits that kill plane, he can go there too. I'm trying to think what else is put in. There's a lot of little things. There were some bugs and things like that I had to fix. For example, for whatever reason, when the player would die like this, it was taking away 2 lives rather than 1 life. So I had to kind of figure out why that was happening. And likewise, once I fixed that, even when the player went from 0, when 1 to 0, it would always go 1 to some negative number. So I kind of had to adjust for that too. But I got those bugs and all that kind of things taken care of. And that's the week's worth of work, and pretty much kind of chugging away at it every day. Going forward, next, I'd like to try to see if I can figure out a way to put snowfall into the game. Then I want to get a background in, want to start to add some snow. And then there's still more of this kind of level management work in the fact that if I have a second scene now, I think I'll try to make 4 or 5 altogether. If I make 5 scenes for the game, the player has to have a way to travel between the scenes. And then if they die having cleared a scene, they have to be able to go back to that previous the scene the highest scene they've been able to clear at, and an option to choose which scene you want to go back in. Then the levels need an endpoint, and the levels have to be designed. So still, it feels like there's a lot to do, and I'm hopeful I can kind of wrap this up in maybe 2 more weeks, probably 3 at most. And again, I'm mainly treating it as a learning experience, not necessarily trying to make a great game, but just trying to make a functional game to learn the stuff so then I can drive it. Because I'd like to get into something new in about 2 or 3 weeks or so. But that's kind of what's gone on. And let's jump in and just talk a little bit about how things are going in terms of motivation and things like that. So in this section, I basically like to talk about how I'm doing between the head in terms of motivation, things that might be interesting side stories and things like that, or observations that I have on my own learning as I go through this. And 3 thoughts I had to mention that I thought. One is that I wasn't really looking forward to this week, to be totally honest, because I'm not a big fan of making user interfaces. And the thing that I noticed with that, so there was kind of a little bit of a fear and a little bit of kind of, this is going to be some heavy lifting that I'm not really going to enjoy. But I was able to keep going through it, and the thing that actually surprised me was that I enjoyed it. But the other thing that I wanted to mention was I've built, I'm not starting from ground zero. I've been kind of off and on doing this for about 2 years, and I kind of work on it for a month and then take like 2 months off and then do a course for like 3 weeks and then not do anything for 4 months and stuff like that. So I've been kind of stuttering and sputtering as I've tried to learn game development over the past couple years. And I've done Unity. I've probably built user interfaces in maybe 2 or 3 different types of prototype games before, things where you're switching levels or showing user score or quit or restart or pause and different things like that. And each time I've done it, it's been a real slog. It's been really hard. It's been confusing. I don't really get it. And eventually I kind of hack my way through it and I get it done. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I had this fear about doing it now with Tundra Runner, is try to put all the scores in and stuff. That's not really actually gameplay. It's just the management of the gameplay and transitioning between levels. And the thing that I've noticed this time is that it hasn't been that hard. I feel like it's been a lot easier to do. And maybe now because I've been doing a game development every day for just a little bit, and it's getting up in those 40, 50 days right now, I feel like I'm getting faster, and building the user interface for Tundra Runner it hasn't been as hard as I thought it was going to be. It hasn't been as painful as I thought it was going to be. And it's been a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. It's much simpler. So I feel like the concepts of how to build this have started to take root. And so that's been pretty exciting. These things that were hard before now aren't all that difficult for me. So with that in mind, that's pretty cool. The second thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is, and a couple people have asked about it now, both at kind of, I mentioned you're talking to people around here, and then I think one person reached out on Twitter, and there's been a couple comments or a comment or so asking about it as well, is kind of why 30 minutes and how long and how did I pick the amount in terms of trying to do that every day. A lot of the work that what I've been trying to do, one of the goals behind this is to build the habit of game design, because I figure if I can build the habit of doing something consistently, kind of quality practice at something every day, then every day I will get better and eventually I'll get good. So the goal really is to develop this skill by building a good habit. And with that in mind, a lot of the stuff that I use comes from a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I strongly recommend. Again, I don't get any money from any of this stuff. This is just stuff that I feel like has worked for me. And I mentioned his book because what he mentions in his book is to make it easy. And it's interesting because I tried to do this once before. I didn't try to make a video series about this, which I think adds an element of accountability. But I tried to do, okay, I'm going to do 100 days. I'm going to do an hour a day or something like that. And when I did try to do before, I tried it at that level, which was an hour a day. And it never worked. And sometimes I'd get like 1 or 2 days in because an hour was really hard to commit to for whatever reason. So kind of one of the principles that he talks about in his book is make the habit really easy. So like if you're trying to exercise, just go to the gym for 5 minutes. Just walk in and walk out the first week. And then the next week, jump on a treadmill for 5 minutes. Just keep making it easy so until you're building up that habit. Because a lot of times what people do is they try to completely devote their lives and make too many drastic changes at once. And that's really hard. So with that in mind, I tried to pick an amount that I felt like, okay, 30 minutes. I feel like I could sit down for 30 minutes and do game design. And what's been really interesting is that I would say probably 80% of the time now, I go past 40 minutes just because I start doing something and I want to finish. And once I get going, it's actually easy to stick in. I know a couple of days last week, it's been up over an hour or so. So I feel like that strategy, that's not my strategy, it's his strategy, is pick an amount of time that's easy for you to consistently do, has been really helpful to try to build up this habit. Now, I wouldn't say I've got the habit cemented down yet, and there's still a long way to go. You're trying to do this for a year, and I'm only 7 weeks in. So obviously, there's still a good chunk of time left to do. But on the whole, I feel like that setting that amount at a number that's been really easy for me to get has been pretty helpful. So pretty much that's all. That's it, I think, for this week. I'm going to try to drive through. I'm starting to feel a little bit like I'm ready to move on to the next thing. But I do want to finish Tundra Runner, and I'm still actually having quite a bit of fun. Quite a bit of fun building. I'm really enjoying it, actually. Not quite a bit. I'm enjoying it a lot. It's fun. And I feel like I'm starting to get that momentum behind getting better at something. And that's empowering because I feel like the strategy and the plan's working. So still super excited about this. I was wondering how I might feel 7 weeks in from the beginning, but I look forward to it as part of my day every day, saying, oh yeah, okay, I get to do this now. It's not like I have to do this. I get to work on this right now. And that's kind of what I was hoping would happen. So I'm finding, yeah, all positives so far. So, if there's something out there you're thinking you try to do, based on what I've found so far, this type of thing is really working for me. And I don't really know if I'll ever get good at this, but I feel like I'm getting better than where I was before. And so from that sense, it's been a good adventure so far. So I'm going to keep going. I'll see everybody hopefully in a week for the week 8 episode. Thanks for stopping by. If you are finding it helpful, enjoying it, please give it a thumbs up. That does help get it in front of more people. If you are new and want to keep up with things, please consider subscribing. The notifications bell always gives you a message as to when a new episode comes out. And if you've got ideas or things you'd like to ask or things you want me to talk about, please feel free to drop a comment. It's always great to hear from people after you put one of these up. So thanks again. Have a great day, everybody, and we will see you again.